I just turned the TV off and I went outside and I just laid down. I have a deck and I laid down just to look at the stars. And I couldn't have been out there for more than 2 minutes. And this craft, this black triangle, it's no different than seeing an airplane fly over your head, but it's a black triangle that doesn't make any noise. And it comes flying in from the south and directly towards me, very low and slow. And I'm like in disbelief. I jump up. I'm like, holy shit, just like, what is this? I'm so captivated by the moment. It never even occurred to me to grab my phone to record. Like, the excitement, like, you don't want to miss a second of it. Because we've been covering UFOs and disclosure and aliens for a long time. But when you finally see something that close, that real, it changes everything. I'm startled because I'm not expecting to see somebody standing in my house in the middle of the night in the basement. Like anyone who sees a stranger in their home in the middle of the night is going to get startled. And so that freaked me out to begin with. But then I'm processing it. I'm like, oh, this isn't even a person. This is like an apparition. Oh, this is like one of these inner earth beings that I've been trying to talk to. And as soon as she started phasing in and I started connecting with her psychically, telepathically, I realized I was put in like a mild state of paralysis. I couldn't move my body. He has two different types of night vision goggles. One of them's the basic military one, but the top of the line one that allows you to see things in the night sky that you would never see with your naked eye. In fact, it's like a whole other world. It almost like
Really?
it's almost like you're accessing a different realm. I've never seen more craft and ships and portals and just like formations, and it'll almost bring you to tears. It's so beautiful.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, I'm really excited to have Tyler Kiwala with us. I have been following the disclosure movement for over 10 years, but Tyler's channel is really special to me. And Tyler, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your channel?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. We've been talking about doing it for a while now, so it's exciting times, exciting to be here. And for those who don't know, my name is Tyler Kiwala. I host a podcast called Journey to Truth. Journey to Truth podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, all over the place. And it's a disclosure podcast, a great awakening, alternative health, spirituality. We cover anything, I guess, that would be considered taboo, but we cover it and we interview people in depth and we deep dive into subjects that a lot of people aren't talking about. Well, at least they weren't. The world is changing now and it's becoming more of the conversation on the world stage. This alien disclosure, UFOs, all that stuff. So we've been doing the podcast. My co-host and I have been doing the podcast since 2019, and we're still doing it. It's 2026, and somehow we're still doing it. But it's turned into more than a podcast. Once you learn the truth about our reality, it becomes a way of life. There's no going back to the old version. In fact, there's nothing else. Like once you learn the truth, there's nothing else. And it becomes a mission. And you understand that people need to know these truths. They need to understand the deeper layers of our reality. So that's what we do. We have conversations, we interview different people every week, and we discuss these topics in depth, at length, and allow the audience, the listener, to decide on their own whether or not what we're discussing that day is true, or if there's any validity to the claims that some of the people are making. But nonetheless, we have come to the conclusion that we have been lied to for our entire lives, our entire existence. History is a lie. Nothing is what we thought it was. And we are in the great reveal right now. And there's a lot coming to the surface, and especially within, the political arena and this UFO disclosure. It's a much deeper rabbit hole than people understand. It's been happening for quite some time, but here we are talking about it. It's catching, it's like mainstream news almost on the world, all over the world right now. So it's exciting times.
You have been doing this since 2017. So, what kind of changes have you seen over the years?
Well, a lot more people are talking about it. We're not getting laughed at like we used to. A lot of the discussions early on, we were just appealing to a very small audience of people who were waking up to this information. Now that audience is getting much broader, but it's reaching new people that aren't ready for the information. So we're kind of experiencing the same thing again. We're reaching this much bigger audience, but these are concepts that are foreign to them. So there's a lot of rejection when people hear that because accepting a new truth, something that they never believed in before, accepting something new actually undermines their belief system. And it's an attack on their identity because people attach their identity to their belief system. And that's a whole other conversation. So when we share this information now, or even before, but especially now when it's reaching a broader audience, a lot of people feel attacked. And all we're doing is sharing information, but they're literally perceiving it as an attack and responding as an attack. And they'll say something angry back because how dare you question their beliefs? How dare you tell them that something that they believe in is wrong? And we're not telling them that it's wrong, but that's how they perceive it. Because if this is true, that means this can't be true in their eyes. So it's a really interesting thing. So it's changed a lot in the sense that more people are talking about it, but at the same time, it's getting broader. So we're still reaching those same kinds of people that are, I would say, in some cases, just in denial about the existence of extraterrestrial life, UFOs, the massive cover-up, and the things that are happening behind the scenes that aren't supposed to exist, And we've come to the conclusion that all of the above is real. It's all possible, and most of the times, the crazier it sounds, the truer it actually is. And it, you
Yeah.
know,
Another factor that adds to the challenge we are experiencing right now is that the disclosure comes from Trump. And I think many people have a mixed opinion about him. So can you tell us who Trump really is and what role he's playing and how is what's going on right now, like for example in Iran, tied to the whole thing?
Yeah, so this is a question that you'll get a different answer from every single person you ask because Trump is a very polarizing figure. A lot of people have opinions about him. A lot of people that used to support him don't anymore because they don't understand the moves that are being made. And really, if you want to zoom out and look at this from the highest perspective, Trump was never a politician to begin with. He was brought in from the outside to play this role to take down the deep state. And the deep state is the global elite. It's dark controllers that manipulate our reality from behind the scenes, and they steer world events, including wars, any political issues. They're most of the time they're fabricated. They're trying to get a knee-jerk reaction out of you. They're called trigger events. They want you to emotionally respond and lash out because they manipulate you that way. So he's brought in with the aid of the military, and that's where the whole 17 operation comes in. Basically, he was appointed a job to help undermine this ancient global cabal that has been manipulating reality for thousands of years. And that is debatable depending on who you talk to, but he does seem to play a prominent role in that. And there's a lot of evidence to support it. There's a lot of evidence that would essentially go against that claim as well, depending on which lens you're viewing the situation from. But he has been actively undermining this cabal, this deep state agenda that was really their end goal was to create a massive World War III type of event with nuclear bombs and depopulate the planet to an extent. And they really had this like long-term agenda to turn us humans into transhumans by injecting technology into us and making us more subservient slaves to the system. It was this very dark agenda to where eventually we would just become autonomous robots walking around under mind control and autopilot every day. So they're trying to reverse that effort. And Trump has been a wrench in the gears since he came into office. And there has been what some call a white hat operation. an alliance operation, a team of people within the political arena and the military working against these dark forces behind the scenes to remove the dark controllers from the chessboard. A lot of people look at this as a game of chess. It's interesting, there's moves and counter moves, and it's really very complex. And if you haven't been paying attention from day one, then trying to get into it and understand it now is nearly impossible. But in my personal opinion, Trump is playing a key role. Some people call him like the bringer of chaos, or he's like this disruptor archetype, where he's not necessarily for good or bad, but he's basically disrupting the system and bringing chaos and like basically ruffling some feathers, for lack of a better term. And that's actually necessary to bring down this old system that's been controlling humanity since the beginning of time. So just him being here in the position that he's in is quite literally, like I said, it's a wrench in the gears of that machine, and it's not allowing that machine to run efficiently anymore. And they've been attacking him since he's entered office, and there's been a major effort to remove him from this game so they can continue on with their agenda to depopulate and enslave humanity. So it's a really interesting war, but that's just the surface level. This gets into extraterrestrials and how they've been working behind the scenes as well, but there's a spiritual aspect to this war as well, spiritual
Hmm.
warfare, angels and demons, and it's multifaceted, multi-layered, multi-dimensional, which most people don't understand. We take a lot of the news headlines at face value, but that's not the truth of what's actually happening. I would say 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, we're getting a lie fed to us. And when you hear things like we're attacking Iran, the excuse that they give us publicly is most likely not the real true reason why we went in and attacked or supposedly attacked. And if there really has been this power structure that has been controlling the world from behind the scenes for thousands of years, there's only one way to take them down is you got to play their game. You got to use their weapons against them. And sometimes you have to play dirty. Peaceful negotiations went out the window. I believe they tried that and it wasn't going to work. So you have to figure out where the head of the snake is. And a lot of people think that's in the Middle East. So
Hmm.
I think that effort in Iran was to cut off the head of the snake, and there's extraterrestrial involvement there, and then you get into a whole thing, reverse engineered ET technology, Stargates, all this stuff that most people don't want to believe in, but I personally believe there's some truth to all of that. In fact, any of these concepts that we hear, it comes from somewhere, it stems from somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's a truth, and then there's an inverted truth. There's for everything organic in life, this dark cabal has created an inorganic version of it to control us and confuse us. So it's very tricky territory. And it's hard to navigate these times without understanding all this, but we're doing our best to help people see the bigger picture.
You said something that I found really interesting, and I think I really resonate with that. You said that if you jump into the scene like right now, if you start following what's going on right now, it's really hard to digest what's going on. I think we got lucky that we've been following this for like well over 10 years, right? So it's easier for us to follow. But I think for people who's not really aware of what's going on, it's almost like too much information, right? But I think the good news is by the end of the day, like ghosts, demons, extraterrestrials, humans, giants, they all come together. It's like all those pieces of the puzzle come together and then really tells a story that's actually clear as the day. But it's just hard to find which point to get started with, right? So to help people understand, do you think if the World War II Germany is a good point for us to start unravel what's really going on?
Yeah, I mean, it goes way back before that, even, to
Yeah.
Sumerian
Uh-huh.
times and the Anunnaki and all that stuff. But if we want to bring it to modern day, modern man, World War II seems to be the inception of a lot of the UFO topics that we discuss, a lot of these secret space program type of things, which is hard to believe for some people, even the advent of time travel. and humans working with extraterrestrials and reverse engineering crashed UFOs. This all seemed to start actually during World War One, prior to World War One, but it wasn't until World War Two where things really ramped up. It seemed like the Germans at the time had really got a grasp on this technology, this what we would call anti-gravity or free energy technology. They had a flying saucer program that they were developing behind the scenes with the help of extraterrestrials and multiple groups of extraterrestrials. A lot of people hear about one specific group of girls called the Vrildamen. They were blonde, beautiful women that were claimed to be from another planet who were channeling blueprints for a UFO, for a flying saucer. And there's a whole story there. I can get into it as deep as you want, or we can say as surface level as you want. But they were effectively, they needed funding to build a flying saucer to get back home. They couldn't do it, so they needed the assistance of the German government and military and to help them build a craft. And they said, if you help us build a craft, we'll build you a craft. So it was the inception of a flying saucer program that eventually the Germans had to had to basically move to Antarctica and Argentina. They had to relocate and set up shop down there because they were no longer safe during a war to continue developing this secret program, this secret technology, without fear of being bombed because they were literally in the middle of a war. So it wasn't worth them to put all of their assets into a program like that in a territory that was in the middle of being attacked. So they relocated down to Antarctica and they set up shop there. And there's a whole, there's actual evidence for that. Base 211, New Schwabenland, it's all there, still there today. But there's a deeper rabbit hole to that story. So while Germany was doing all this, the United States had spies in Germany during the war, and they were from the United States Navy, and they were spies that were basically embedding themselves into German culture, into the military, becoming them, and hiding among the order. And they were retrieving blueprints and taking photographs of these top secret facilities that were where they were working with extraterrestrial women and literally building flying saucers and experimenting with technology that quite literally wasn't supposed to exist. Still, even today, we're still fighting for that technology. The Navy spies took that information and they brought it back to the United States during World War II. And that was the inception of the United States secret space program, our flying saucer program. But I've come across more information that shows that the United States was already developing flying saucers on their own prior to World War II. They had it's all compartmentalized, so the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. But I've come across new information that would say we actually secretly had our own what they called a round wing plane. Actually, it wasn't a flying. They called it a round wing plane, a disc. They had their own round wing plane program, but we didn't know that Germany did. And then it became a matter of, well, who's going to have the upper hand here? Like this war that they were fighting on the surface that was theater compared to what was really going on behind the scenes. And you have two countries reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology and potentially even developing a secret space program that was going to the moon and Mars and other places far, far before anything publicly was ever announced as far as the Apollo missions. And then after World War II, whatever deal was struck, Project Paperclip brought a bunch of German scientists into the United States and they put them at the top of every major corporation in our country, including NASA, the space program, and Warner von Braun. And what some people believe is that the reason that they came over here and were put in place and given positions as CEOs in major businesses here in the States is they were, well, for one, potentially we didn't actually win the war, and this would be evidence of that. On paper we did, but really there was something else going on. And two, somebody like Warner von Braun, who allegedly was involved in the reverse engineering of these flying saucers, but also time travel. And that's a really hard one for people to grasp. But there is paperwork, there is evidence, there's books. I have a stack of them here that talk about this. There's testimonies and German scientists and engineers who were involved in this stuff. So Warner von Braun comes and he is positioned at the top of NASA and keeps us focused on getting to space via rockets. And what does that do? It takes our eyes off of the reverse engineering, the flying saucer program, the time travel, and they trick the American public and the world into believing the latest and greatest way to get to space is through this rocket technology, which is hilariously ancient technology at this point, and they're still doing it. And we just had a rocket explode. I think I can't remember the name of the company off the top of my head, but they just had a rocket blow up on the launch pad like a few days ago.
SpaceX?
No,
No,
maybe
something else.
is Blue Origin, is that one of them? Something like that. Either way,
Uh-huh.
um, what that's telling us is that that's a archaic system. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't like we're not going to evolve as a species, as humanity. We're not going to ascend into the higher realms by getting there with a rocket. Like, we're living in a multi-dimensional reality, and there are other ways to other planets, and shooting a tin can through the atmosphere is not how we do it. And they're going to keep blowing up, just like all the major airplanes and airlines, commercial airlines. The planes are breaking down and they're malfunctioning. This is this is we're seeing the breakdown of an old system that no longer serves us. And these rockets are going to keep exploding and these planes are going to keep breaking down until we finally get this free energy technology released that's been suppressed for 70 years now, that would allow us to travel across the world in minutes, teleportation, and even whatever the case is. We no longer need fuels, jet fuel. Like there's other technologies that are free energy that don't require us to spend any money, and we can get from point A to point B in almost no time, and it would change this world overnight. But um, that's we're not there yet. But that's why all this disclosure is happening, and I think we're gonna get there. But what we're seeing now is the breakdown of an old system, and it's gonna keep not working until somebody finally somebody throws in the towel and says, okay, like we understand it's time to move forward and humanity is presented with this technology that allows us more freedom and it'll change the world. But it all started really in World War II and Germany and the United States, but Russia was heavily involved, and yeah, I'm sure China actually had a space program I've heard about. In fact, the Artemis Accords is something that people can look up, and that really lays out how all of the major countries are working behind the scenes together. Um, Basically, it's an indicator that I think that everyone secretly has some sort of a space program, and we're working together at the top, while on the surface it looks like everybody is divided, and it's not really what it appears to be.
Hmm. And Tyler, to make this more convincing to the audience, have you encountered personally like any of those saucers or anti-gravitational vehicles yourself?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us
Yeah.
more?
Yes, I will. I've seen the lights in the sky, stuff that you don't know could be something. But then I've seen a few things that are matter of fact, solid craft, and two of them were broad daylight sightings, and one of them was at night. The one at night I'll start with because it's the most common sighting is I saw a TR-3B or a black triangle UFO with a white light on each corner. It was March of 2022. I just got home and I sat on my couch to watch a movie and I was like, you know what? It's really nice. This was the first nice night of the year. It was really pleasant weather. So I'm like, I'm gonna go outside and look at the stars. And so I just turned the TV off and I went outside and I just laid down. I have a deck and I laid down just to look at the stars. And I couldn't have been out there for more than 2 minutes. And this craft, this black triangle, it's no different than seeing an airplane fly over your head, but it's a black triangle that doesn't make any noise. And it comes flying in from the south and directly towards me, very low and slow. And I'm like in disbelief. I jump up. I'm like, holy shit, just like, what is this? I'm so captivated by the moment. It never even occurred to me to grab my phone to record. Like, the excitement, like, you don't want to miss a second of it because we've been covering UFOs and disclosure and aliens for a long time. But when you finally see something that close, that real, it changes everything. And it flew over and then it banked. It literally turned and started heading east and it had banked and it was just I watched it fly off into the distance, completely silent.
So
And
that
it
means
should,
the craft came just for you to see it.
yeah, it did. And there's a whole story that goes with why I believe that happened, but it was almost like something nudged me to go outside at that very moment
Hmm.
to see that. And it was it was amazing because that was the moment for me that it became real. We talk about it all the time, but I hadn't had a solid sighting yet that convinced me. Even though I was convinced, I hadn't seen it yet. And I finally got my opportunity. And I think that happened for a reason because of what I do. I think these opportunities show up to help us understand that like what we're talking about, there's actually some truth to it. And here's the evidence, and here's your personal sighting. And that was just one case. I've seen a silver disc in broad daylight over my house one time. Same thing, exact same thing. I went outside to go just sit outside and relax in the shade. As soon as I walked out, I sat down and looked up, and there's this. It looked like a flashing light, but I looked closer, and it was a silver disc spinning. And I got my phone out this time, and it literally would not show up on the camera. My camera could not see it. I could see it with my eyes, and my camera, if I was zooming in, it wasn't there. The camera couldn't pick it up, and that I was like so perplexed by it. And so by the time I'm like messing with it, realizing that my phone's not going to pick it up, it wasn't very long before it was just gone. And then another occasion, I was in Mount Adams, which is in Washington State, and there's a famous UFO hotspot there, and there's a mountain there where people see UFOs flying in and out of, and all kinds of anomalous activity. It was in the middle of the day, and there was a cigar-shaped craft, and it was hovering near the mountain, and it was me and two or three other people that were watching this, and it hovered, it went behind the mountain, and then it came back, and then went behind the mountain and came back. We watched it for like 20 minutes.
Wow.
And my friend said it almost looks like he's waiting for clearance to get into the mountain. That's what he said. And I was like, that kind of makes sense. And we watched it. And three of us were there and we all tried to film it. Only one person's phone actually picked it up, but it just looked like this little black dot. It didn't look like anything, on the phone. And phones weren't as good back then. And we watched it until it eventually it just after about 20 minutes it just went kind of downwards and into the mountain and then never came back out.
Yeah, and I remember Emery Smith said he brought some device, like a goggle or something, so you guys can test it out. So did
Yeah.
you see anything special using that, or is it like something you're not supposed to talk about?
No, I can talk about it. Yeah, it's he has two different types of night vision goggles. One of them's the basic military one, but the top of the line one that allows you to see things in the night sky that you would never see with your naked eye. In fact, it's like a whole other world.
Really?
It's almost like you're accessing a different realm. I've never seen more craft and ships and portals and just like formations and it was it'll almost bring you to tears. It's so beautiful. Like it's like
So,
oh, we
oh,
don't
I'm sorry.
understand. It's like we don't understand what is actually in our sky, but it's just out of our like color spectrum. We can't see it.
So what does a portal look like?
Well, it's just whenever I say a portal, you'll see a like a almost like a slow bright light, and then like a ship or something will just come out of it, and then the light closes back up. I kept seeing that a few times. You would just see like a flash, and then something came out of it, and then it would go away. Or a craft would be moving, and then you would see a flash, and it would just disappear, like as if it opened its own portal or something like that. And what's interesting is literally, yet last night I shared it on our Instagram. One of the things in the UFO documents that they're talking about releasing is there's a lot of information and verbiage on portals and stargates. And it's no longer a theory because here it is in these declassified military documents that we're getting ready to see publicly once they finally release them. But the people that have seen them said, yeah, they're talking about portals as if they're a matter of fact thing and they're known. So I was witnessing that with my own eyes.
Wow. So what you're saying is right now we're experiencing a very subtle way of disclosure. I remember years back people were saying like there will be like fake invasions or something like that. So out of the blue we'll just see huge saucers coming to us. I guess that's not happening.
That's a lot of people think that is happening still. And people like Stephen Greer, big name researchers are discussing and warning of a fake alien invasion. They said that the military has the technology, they're going to fake it and make it and blame it on aliens or whatever the case is. What I think is actually happening is I think certain people that are in top positions like him are fed specific information to leak to the public to steer the narrative. My personal opinion on this, and I could be wrong, is that there is some sort of treaty in place and there's a deadline for humanity to disclose extraterrestrial life to the public. And we're coming up on that deadline, hence the sudden push for ET disclosure, almost like they waited for the very last minute. And then they're like, okay, fine, we'll do it. We'll tell them. And then now they're still trying to drag their feet and dance around it and confuse us. And I think the deadline means that if we don't do it, they will, meaning these extraterrestrials will show up in the skies, which they already are, but they'll show up in masses to where people won't question it. And it might even scare people, but they'll disclose themselves. And they're not here to hurt us. They're here to actually assist us if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But they wouldn't be showing up in the sky to attack us. They would be showing up in the sky to let us know that they're real and they exist. But what the government wants you to think is that they're trying to spin it and trying to tell us that these are fake aliens. This is a fake alien invasion. This isn't real. So what does that do to your psyche? What does that do to your subconscious mind, your conscious mind? Now, whenever you've heard that so many times for so many years, you've heard it for so long now, whenever a real craft shows up in the sky, you've been programmed to think, oh, that's a hologram, or that's just the military, or that's, whatever. That's a fake, that's not a real thing. And that's what they want. They want us to discount every real credible sighting that we have. And we're literally been programmed for so long to believe that there's going to be a fake invasion. When something really does show up, people are going to be like, it could be as real as you and I. And it could be a real race of extraterrestrials from another planet, another dimension, here visiting us, disclosing to the world that they're real. But 99% of people are going to say, oh, that's fake because they've been told by the media and social media and all of these top UFO researchers that they're being fed information to feed their audience that it's fake. So they're going to literally gaslight you into thinking your real, credible UFO sighting was fake. And that's why they're doing that, in my opinion.
Hmm. And by government, you meant the cabal, right? You don't mean the Trump administration, right?
Well,
Like the
no, I
Russians.
mean, I say, when I say governments, like, I don't think what's happening with the the Trump administration and like that whole military operation, that's like a separate entity from the mainstream government
Hmm.
that's going to kind of been controlling us. So when I say government, I'm talking essentially about the cabal or the government is to govern the mind is what that means. It's basically an effort to control the minds of the masses into believing a lie, which is what they're put in place to maintain that facade. So yeah, there's a difference there. But when I say government, I'm referring to the dark controllers. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And the extraterrestrials that we're talking about, they don't just come from the above, right? They also
Yeah.
come from somewhere else. So do you want to talk about the inner Earth and the people you have been in touch with?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a complex topic. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
not just that they're from space and other planets, which a lot of people even think space is fake and there are no other planets. I do believe that there are. I don't think space is what we think it is. I think we misunderstand what it really is, but nevertheless, I think they're coming from other planets, other dimensions, and right here below our feet from inside the planet, from the inner Earth, the hollow Earth, and I have another stack of books. It's something I get into. There's multiple testimonies of the planet being hollow and advanced civilizations living within our planet. And for hundreds of years, people have been stumbling into these entrances and discovering this world within a world. And there's documents, there's evidence, and I find the more I dig, the more I find that would prove, in my eyes, there's no question that there are advanced civilizations of extraterrestrials and humans living beneath our feet under mountain ranges, in the holes at the North and South Pole, which is where the Germans went after World War II. They set up New Germany, New Berlin, but it's inside the planet. Um, there's so many, it's a hard thing to grasp if it's new to you, but the information's out there. And if you set your intention to learn the truth about something like that, that information will show up for you in your
Hmm.
algorithm, the book, you'll find the book in a bookstore. But in my opinion, some of the UFOs, a lot of them, even potentially that we see, are coming from these either inner Earth civilizations, underground cities, or deep underground military bases. Some of them might be our own craft, even, but they're also coming from underground. And there's a whole story there. And I mean, we're kind of just scratching the surface of a lot of these subjects here, but there's a deep dive with each one that you choose to go down.
Yeah, there are so many ways for us to like approach this topic, right? Do you want to share some of your own experiences with the inner Earth beings, if that's something that's okay with
Yeah,
you?
yeah, sure, I can. That's if everyone's ready for it. Yeah, this is something that has been a very big interest of mine for since 2010 when I learned about the lost diary of Admiral Byrd. And if people don't know who Admiral Byrd is, he's a military pilot that broke a lot of world records, circumnavigating the world. He flew to the North Pole and the South Pole, and he was on a lot of exploration missions. And allegedly, on one of his missions, he discovered a hole at the North Pole and he flew into the hole and was encountered by flying saucers and a very advanced civilization. He landed, saw this whole other world that is existing beneath our feet that no one knows about. And he was given a message to relay back to the Pentagon, back to the United States military to stop using nuclear weapons or we'll destroy ourselves. And there's a lot more than that. But in a nutshell, he was basically given this message and he went back and he was debriefed and he told them the story and he was told to never talk about it again. I felt in my heart, in my core, that that story was true when I read it. And it really piqued my interest. Well, years went by before I actually had my big awakening, and the Hollow Earth subject started coming up again. And I was listening to testimonies and people that claimed that Earth is hollow. I was reading books, and it was fascinating to me. And I started learning about telepathic communication and that you can actually communicate with these beings. They're very advanced and they use telepathy. And if you sit down with an intention and meditation, you can do it. But you have to raise your frequency too, because they exist in a higher frequency. So you kind of have to meet them halfway. So I stopped eating meat. I went on a high vibe diet. I was really serious about, all right, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to try to communicate telepathically. And it didn't work at first. It was just nothing was happening, but I kept doing it anyway because I had believed in it so much. I had read and watched so many things that convinced me that it was real. I just kept trying, and I did it for about a month until one night I had a response back, but it didn't come back telepathically, and I wasn't expecting it. I actually fell asleep during my meditation, and I woke up from a text message that from an unknown number that said, "Are you ready to meet us?" And I don't know why, but something in my inside of me knew that it was them. And people, when I tell this story, people have a hard time believing, like, oh, an advanced being wouldn't text you. Yes, they would. And there's a whole story behind why I believed that they would. But I'll get to that after I tell the story. So I said, of course, I would love to meet you. And they said, come to your back door. I was sleeping in a house that had a basement, and the basement walked out into the backyard. And that's where I was sleeping, was in the basement at the time. So I get up in the middle of the night and I go open the back door to look outside, expecting to see like a UFO in my yard or somebody standing there, and nothing happened. And I looked I'm looking up, I'm looking around, and I'm thinking to myself, man, somebody's pranking me. Somebody's playing a trick on me. Like, why would I believe they would even text me? This is ridiculous. And I just kind of bummed out about the whole thing, and I just go to turn around and go back inside, and there's this apparition in my basement. It's just an apparition like a white ghostly being. This woman. Um, she was phasing into my reality, but she was transparent. She wasn't fully solid. She was like hovering there, and like I couldn't even see from her knees down, like a ghost, like almost like you would imagine a ghost or an apparition, like floating there. But she was tall and blonde and beautiful, and she had this white robe on with this like blue undergarment and this gold necklace with this like medallion thing on it. And I turn around and I see this woman phasing into my reality, and it scares the shit out of me. Pardon my language. I'm startled because I'm not expecting to see somebody standing in my house in the middle of the night in the basement. Like anyone who sees a stranger in their home in the middle of the night is going to get startled. And so that freaked me out to begin with. But then I'm processing it. I'm like, oh, this isn't even a person. This is like an apparition. Oh, this is like one of these inner earth beings that I've been trying to talk to. And as soon as she started phasing in and I started connecting with her psychically, telepathically, I realized I was put in like a mild state of paralysis. I couldn't move my body. It wasn't painful. It wasn't negative, but I couldn't move. And in hindsight, I know what was happening. When these higher dimensional beings show up in our reality, it's too dense here for them to actually exist all the time. That's why we don't see them. That's why I had to meet them halfway and raise my vibration. But what she had to do was alter the density of the room in order to show herself so I could perceive her. So by altering the density of the room, which is basically turning the frequency dial up, by raising that frequency, it put me into a very uncomfortable frequency where I couldn't actually use my physical body because she had to change that to so she could appear before me. And I'm sitting there staring at her. I can't move. And she's nothing but love, emanating nothing but love, right? Just white light and love, like almost like an angel. And she connects with me telepathically and she says, honey, you're not ready. And she disappeared after that. And what she meant was, I wasn't ready to have that experience yet on my journey. I came here for a mission. There was a lot I still had to do. and there's a whole download that came with it. But I got the message. I understood what she meant, and I was here. I incarnated on this planet to participate in this awakening, to be part of this disclosure movement. And I had a lot of work to do to snap humanity out of their trance. And communicating with them was only secondary to my primary mission here. And I think they showed up to let me know, yes, we exist. Yes, you can talk to us, but you need to focus on this right now. So that's what happened. And there's a little more to that story, but it was it was life changing in a sense. And I ran back in the room to check my phone to see if like to screenshot the text because nobody would believe me. And there was no text. They were gone. They were erased. I was very disappointed about that because I thought not only did I have this experience, but I had the evidence on my phone to prove it, but the evidence was gone. The internet part of it, the texting part of it, that's the hard part for people to grab onto. But if these are advanced beings that live here on Earth with us, but inside the Earth, essentially in a higher dimension, it's there's a reason they can't come to the surface, and it has a lot to do with the pollution and just how dense it is and all the frequency towers. It doesn't allow them to reside up here. But if they have access, if they're that advanced and they live on the same planet as we do, they would, I think, absolutely be able to access our cell towers and our internet, our satellites, and that entire network and tap into it and send me a message through my phone. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all. In fact, the more I researched these inner Earth civilizations, they have their own internet. It's an amino acid based internet system that is organic in every sense of the word, meaning that the planet itself already has an internet system. It's called the mycelium network. It's the root system that connects every living thing on this planet, trees, plants, grass, anything that's rooted into the ground. It's a neural network, and it communicates with each other. And one tree can communicate a message to another tree across the planet instantaneously. It's a data transfer of information, and it's been it's been perfected from what I've read by these inner Earth inhabitants, and they use it as an internet, kind of like we do, but they use their internet for a much greater purpose than just like numbing the mind, right? Like we mindlessly scroll through our internet and it distracts us. Theirs actually assists them, and it's an entirely different thing. But nevertheless, they still have an internet system and technology that might even look similar to our iPhone or an iPad, because I think that's where we got the idea from. In fact, people call them like a smart glass pad. It's completely clear. It doesn't really look like anything. You would walk by it on the ground and think it was a piece of glass, but really, it's a crystal technology that's activated with your consciousness. And I think that's where we're going technologically. And I think the iPhones, all phones, are a precursor to that, but they're intentionally giving us the old versions of it, while the elites and the shadow government, the military industrial complex, the private sector, whatever you want to call them, they have access to the good stuff and they just trickle out. This phone is probably 10 years, 15-year-old technology that we're just getting released to us as something new. We're way behind here on the surface than what's actually available. So it's really fascinating. I don't know if you want me to get into any more of it, but that's kind of in a nutshell. I've had other inner Earth encounters as well, but that was the first one.
Hmm. So that was a benevolent encounter, right? She
Yeah,
was full of
100%.
love.
Yes,
But
full of.
yeah, but we are also like in the kind of war state. Would you say that, like spiritual war? So there are different factions of extraterrestrials involved in this game. So have you had any encounters with the malevolent beings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, malevolent. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot. And that's what woke me up actually. In 2011, my mother passed away. And prior to that in my life, I had never had any experiences, paranormal experiences, nothing. In fact, I was just like a normal kid in the Matrix. It was just, it was very insignificant, even though all of our lives are significant. There was nothing happening that was extraordinary. And after my mother passed away, almost immediately, I experienced my first, what I would call an attack. Some people, I tell the story, some people think it was an alien abduction that I don't remember, but I unfortunately was levitated out of my bed. And that's hard for people to believe, but that's what happened. And there's a whole story with it. But eventually I woke up. Well, once I got back into my bed, I had this shadow figure, this entity on top of me, pinning me down, and I couldn't move. And this was like kind of like you hear sleep paralysis. This was a different type of paralysis. This was painful and scary. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream for help. It was like this thing was trying to suffocate me and it was on top of me, but I couldn't see it. I could only feel it. You can feel the weight of it. And it put my body, it paralyzed me. I had just levitated up and back down, and then when I got back down, it like pinned me down, and I had to fight for my life. I had to give myself this pep talk and try to talk myself into it, like move, just move your arms. Come on, you can do it. Get up, move your legs. Like why? Like you moved, you can do it. You can do it. I'm like, and finally, I somehow mustered up the courage to break free from it. And I jumped out of my room. I ran down the hallway. I'm like, what the F was that? And it fundamentally changed everything I thought I knew because I didn't believe in that stuff before. And now I just got attacked by a demon. That's what it felt like. And I was awake the entire time. Like there was no mistaking what happened. I wasn't drunk. People think, were you drunk? No. Um, it changed me. And it was the first of many dark attacks. And at first they just showed up as they were invisible. I couldn't see them, but they were in my room. Sometimes I would see them as shadow people, and I was being attacked. Sleep paralysis. They were attacking me in my dreams, and it got very, very complex and very, very bad. And
How
I
old
was
were you at the
missing.
time when it first
I was
happened?
I was 24, and then I had just was on getting ready to turn 25, but it had started happening right then. And it got so bad that I was afraid of the dark all of a sudden. I was afraid to go to sleep. I didn't want to turn the lights out. I didn't even want to go to bed. Some nights I forced myself to stay awake. I missed countless days of work because I was not sleeping and I was being attacked. I didn't tell anybody about it. It was very hard and traumatic. And then eventually it turned into me seeing some of these beings, and some of them were like gray aliens, some of them were very reptilian-like, some of them were just shadow people, some of them just looked like monsters that you would see in a cartoon or a scary movie. Like that stuff is all real. Like I would see it. It's almost like they can take any form that they want. They can show up as anything that they want. And why I understand why all that happened was because I didn't believe in anything at the time, and there's a whole story there, but I was like an atheist. I didn't believe in God or the devil. I just believed in like science and evolution, and there's nothing else. I was very young and dumb. Um, Through that darkness, through the attacks, I realized, well, at some point it dawned on me. I'm like, I used to laugh at all this stuff and make fun of it. But if all this darkness is real, which it is, and I could prove it because like it's ruining my life, then the light has to be real too. As soon as I had that epiphany, that's when things started to change because I started to believe. And that's when I decided to start talking and I told my dad about what was happening. And he was the first person I vocalized this to. As soon as I talked about it, as soon as I started to believe, and as soon as I asked for help, it came. And my life changed. It started changing. The attacks didn't stop, but I started getting help and I started these tools and these people started showing up in my lives and I had to really understand the spiritual war and that God exists and there's something much higher than I understand happening here and I'm in the middle of it now And I had to like develop these tools to overcome this stuff. So which required me changing my belief system and letting go and surrendering and just understanding like, okay, like I need some help. And as soon as I opened my mouth and said I need help, that's whenever it showed up. But until then, you're just going to suffer in silence. Like that term comes from somewhere. So I had to, it took years, but I understood, I started slowly understanding what was happening to me and understanding that my own fear was perpetuating more of that. And they were feeding off that fear. And I was just getting worse and worse and worse. And they really had me. And the light wins. Once you really embody that light and you understand that the fear is an illusion and you understand their game, they started getting tricky and they were really trying to, come up with new ways to attack me. Once I learned how to protect myself from certain attacks, then they would do it another way. And it was like this game of cat and mouse, adapt and overcome. I would change my strategy, they would change their strategy, and I never understood why. I'm like, why are they coming at me so hard? Now I think I know why, because here I am on this mission to help awaken humanity and be a part of this disclosure movement and really shine a light on this stuff. And I think they knew that was coming and they were trying to stop me from ever stepping into that and ever remembering who I was. And that's where the spiritual warfare comes in. And that happens with everybody. Everybody who is unaware is unconsciously being manipulated into being someone that they're not, so they don't discover who they truly are. And, that's where it gets into a whole other thing, but it's a very deep, deep story.
Hmm. Yeah, it sure is. And maybe that explains why we have so many people experiencing mental health struggles, like depression. So it's
Yep.
almost like it's really hard for us to get in touch with our soul in a way. It's really hard for us to get help. I'm pretty sure you have experienced this before, like in a different timeline, different life. But over here, living this life, we have to do this all over again. So that's why it's so hard. And unless we find our true calling, it's we're just going to feel some things missing in our lives, right? But once that's finally
Yes.
emerges, like your experience, you let yourself be who you are meant to be, then everything becomes a lot easier, right?
Yeah, 100% you nailed it. And that is the reason for all the mental health. I mean, that's all engineered and we can get into that system, but they want people addicted to alcohol, pharmaceuticals, drugs. It keeps you in a lower frequency so they can manipulate you. All the cell towers, all those negative, harmful frequencies, even the music is tuned to a frequency that's not coherent with our body. It's all designed to keep us at a lower vibration and keep us trapped in this matrix. Once you start to see through that, you can rise above it. But when you rise above it, they see who you are. They see who's breaking programming. They see who's coming online, and they'll send in reinforcements to even try and keep that person at bay. And that's where you really find yourself in these fights, in these spiritual combat, the spiritual warfare. And you have to overcome this stuff. And it's all test. It really is just a big major test. It's like training. It's like spiritual training. And if you learn the lessons, you level up to the next level, and you could really liken the entire experience here on Earth to a video game. And it's not always fun, and it's hard, and it's difficult, we're being tested, and people are being suppressed, so they don't realize that they're living in a simulation. So they can't override that code because they don't understand that they're literally been programmed. Like actually, I don't think people understand when I say they're being programmed quite literally, like as if they are a computer program. They have been programmed to live a certain version of reality, to believe in a certain belief system that literally keeps them in a box that will not allow them to discover their true potential, their true history, or anything about this reality. And it's engineered that way. And it usually the byproduct of that is people talking to themselves on the streets, homeless people, mental health issues, suicide. People's their soul is craving more. They're always looking for a purpose. Like you said, that's why you see so many entrepreneurs and people trying to start podcasts and businesses and stuff because they're just for, they're looking for something to make them feel important, make them feel like they have purpose. But really, the true purpose that they're looking for is remembering who they are and coming back online and breaking out of this trance that the whole collective has been put under. That's their purpose. And then to help override that frequency so it doesn't happen again. And so we can put a stop to it. But not everyone is quite there yet. Not everyone's ready to remember that and take on that mission. But I would say the people that are lost out there looking for purpose, they usually find it in something that really isn't fulfilling them like they want it to. And that's where you see humanity. Everybody's looking for something to fulfill their that void to fulfill them, but they're not going to find it until they go on a path of self-discovery.
So what you are saying essentially is that movies like The Matrix or the Terminator or Avatar, there's some truth to it, right?
Yeah, in fact, there's something called the military entertainment complex. It's just like the military and industrial complex, but there are certain movies that the script has to be approved by either the Department of War, the CIA, the Pentagon. There's a whole board, and the scripts get approved, they get altered, they get changed, and they're leaked, they're shown to the public at that point. And that's because they have something, there's a treaty potentially with extraterrestrials called the Continuing Public Acclamation Program, meaning that they have to tell us the truth through, in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't matter. But a lot of times, the best way to do that is through entertainment. So they're literally required to put certain truths out in movies. And we're just supposed to believe that it's science fiction or write it off as fake, comedy, whatever it is. But it's being very well crafted. And what is released, especially the big Hollywood films, it's all very strategic. And it's really to either divert us or steer us one way or the other. We're getting partial truth. It's not all the truths, but they're still putting that out there in the movies like The Matrix, like Avatar, because that all stems from somewhere. It's all true somewhere. And it's called revelation of the method. They have to show us. This is part of the cabal's rules. They have to show us, and by showing us, and if we watch it, essentially to them, in their mind, that means we watch it, we've seen it, now we're giving them consent to control us or whatever it is. And it's everything that we're discussing here. You really have to, it takes years of research and living this type of life and experiencing the things that I have and you have and other people that are watching this. Like it takes time to come to a true understanding that this stuff is real. But, you know, I can sit here and talk to the audience all day long and they're just hearing me. But until they actually experience something for themselves and it gets real for them, or they apply something to their lives and actually try to change, then nothing's going to change. You know, if you want to change, you got to change. And most people think they want change until things get hard, and then they resort back to their default programming, and they go backwards actually, and then they find what's comfortable for them, and then they stay in line. And it's not easy to jump out of line, but once you do, that's where true abundance and that's where life begins.
Yeah, and people say this is like the boot camp for the soul, right? This is supposed to be the one of the hardest realities that as a soul we can possibly experience, right?
So I've heard, and I would agree with that.
Yeah. What do you think about the new movie coming up, Disclosure Day, right? Have you heard anything about it?
Yeah, in fact, I've been following that. I think that it's all in line. Everything's staged. This whole disclosure has been planned for quite some time. There's been many whistleblowers, military whistleblowers, talking about some potential event in 2027 that would change the face of humanity regarding extraterrestrials and understanding the reality of extraterrestrials and their involvement with humanity. Something is coming, whether it's a deadline, a treaty is ending, like I talked about earlier, or the ETs are just going to show themselves, or whatever it is that I can't even think of. Something is coming. We're on the cusp of something, some major paradigm shift for humanity. And I think they're all getting their ducks in a row. They have aliens.gov, they're releasing these documents, they're having these hearings. People are discussing different types of extraterrestrials on mainstream media now, Nordics, insectoids, grays, and reptilians. And that's only four of hundreds of species, if not thousands, that have been interacting with Earth. But What they're doing is they're getting their ducks in a row because it's all real and it's all coming out as the collective consciousness of the planet raises, as it elevates. That stuff can't stay hidden anymore because the truth can never stay hidden. Like you can only suppress it, but you can't keep it locked away forever. Inevitably, it surfaces. And I think they're trying to get ahead of that right now. And I think this movie Disclosure Day is part of what I said earlier, that continuing public acclamation program, meaning that here it is. But this time, they're not selling it as science fiction. They have Steven Spielberg himself in the trailer of the film telling you that everything you're going to see in this film is true. It's real. This has never been done before. Prior to that, it's always been released as a science fiction movie. They're calling it Disclosure Day because it quite literally will be a disclosure day for the world. It's not just a title of the movie. Now, it's a partial disclosure. There's no way they can give you the full truth in one movie like that. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions about it, but we have them literally telling us that Steven Spielberg saying, "Isn't it amazing that people get to walk away from this film and understand that everything that they just watched in that movie is true?" They're not selling it as a sci-fi movie. It's presented as a sci-fi movie, but they're selling it as Disclosure Day, as a fact. And whether or not there's embellished truths in those movies, because that's what Hollywood does, that's probably we're going to see some of that. Either way, it's a gigantic leap. It's a major stepping stone that's going to take us to the next layer of disclosure, whatever that is. And I think eventually we're going to see things like the craft showing up in broad daylight. They no longer have to cloak themselves, they no longer have to hide. Eventually, it's going to be we're walking down the street alongside of extraterrestrials, whether they're Nordics or Greys or whatever. It's going to become a Star Trek, Star Wars civilization. And that's where we're heading. And I think personally, I think we're gonna get like the Nordics look more human. I think that's gonna be, they're the grays have we've been all programmed to understand the gray. So they might show us the gray type of alien first because we all believe, okay, this makes sense now because they've been priming the collective for years now. But I think what we're really looking at and the big disclosure is going to be that some of these ETs don't look any different than us. In fact, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart from a human. And once we realize that, then we're going to be able to identify them and we're going to be able to spot them and realize that we've been living alongside them the whole time. But what that'll do, what that understanding will do, it'll allow us to accept the fact that other ETs exist too. And we might quite literally be working with them and walking alongside them in the grocery store, intermingling with them at some point consciously. I think it's happening now or unconsciously. We don't know how to identify him. That person looks weird. We just think he's a weird looking person. It could be an ET. You don't know. You might have had conversations with ETs, but that disclosure, it's going to look, it's not going to be as enamorous. It's not going to be as amazing because people are going to realize like, oh, they're just like us. It would be the equivalent to you or I traveling to a foreign country we've never been to and trying to live amongst those people and their way of life. It's going to feel alien to us, but they're still human. They look like us, but they also look different. That's what ETs are. It's no different. It'll be like I would liken visiting another planet to visiting another country, and I don't think it would be much different than that.
Hmm. And this is just like a really exciting time, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like almost like we both know like how much people are going through these days, right? With the inflation, the environment, and like a lack of shortage of jobs and all that. So it's
yeah,
a very hard time for everyone. But it's also like we got the golden ticket if we
right.
choose to look at what's coming,
Yes,
right?
yes. And change occurs through stress, and God knows that. Any higher, they know that. They know that humans learn the hard way. We like to learn the hard way. We all know this because our parents tell us things growing up that we ignore. And then we're 25 years old one day and we're like, oh, now I know why. Now I know why my dad told me to do this or wear
Hmm.
my seatbelt or whatever. Because it takes time. We have to learn the hard way.
Hmm.
So they can't come out and tell us this stuff. Nobody will believe it. They can't come out and tell us we've been controlled and suppressed and lied to. We have to experience it. We have to see the corruption, live through the corruption, understand how bad it is, see the manipulation, see the lies, and change that. The change that we're looking for, that occurs through the stress of these times. A diamond is created through pressure. A diamond, through extreme pressure is only when a diamond, and heat, a diamond can be created. Same thing with us. If we're going to ascend, if we're going to raise our consciousness and move into a golden age, with that golden ticket, like you said, it's going to occur through stressful times because we have to experience it. We can't be told it's bad. We have to know it's bad. We have to live it. We have to experience it. And then it has to activate us. It's called activation protocol. Then we stand up. Then we fight because now we know. Now we don't have to believe the people that have been telling us they've been lying. We know that they're lying and controlling. And this disclosure is really going to wake people up because it's not just disclosure of extraterrestrials, is that there's been agreements made to work with these ETs and exchange humans for ET technology. And this is where the ET abductions come in. And they've been working alongside of us in deep underground military bases. And there's breeding programs, hybrid breeding programs they're talking about. I can say this stuff now because it's not a conspiracy theory. It's out there. They're disclosing it. There's hybrid breeding programs where they've been genetically manipulating and altering our DNA and creating these hybrid beings. And once people understand that that's all true and that's not conspiracy, that's going to make some people really mad. And it's going to force them to stand up. And that's what we need. People need to take action. We can't just sit on the fence anymore. Like if you want to be complacent and complicit, then just keep doing what you're doing and don't change a thing about the life and let them create reality for you. Or you can snap out of it and create your own reality and change this world. But that choice is yours. Like what 17 says, the choice to know is yours. And the truth isn't for everyone.
That's why your channel is called Journey to Truth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This is really fun, Tyler. And we
Yeah,
would definitely love to have you back again. And can you tell us how people can find you?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much. I really appreciate the questions. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm excited to get this information out to a new audience. That's really, really important to me and special. I'm honored that you asked me to be your first guest. So thank you for that. And if anyone is interested, they could go to journeytotruth.online. That's our website, and that's where they can find everything we do. We are on YouTube and Rumble and X and Facebook and Instagram and all the social media accounts. But if you want to find all that, you can just easily type in journeytotruth.online and find everything we do on our website, including documentaries that we've put out, a new one on the secret space program that your audience might be interested in. And there's just webinars, we've written books. I mean, there's a lot. Like I said, we host events. So go check out the website and follow us on social media or on YouTube if you want to keep up with what we do.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend it to everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again, Tyler.